This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I recap the college football playoffs. We talk about the first game, which was Michigan versus TCU. What happened to Michigan? Is this the Michigan we're going to see from now on that can't win the big game? And then we talk about Ohio State versus Georgia. Ohio State was this close to winning it, but they ultimately came up short. What is next for this Ohio State team? And then we recap some of the other bowl games that happened. We move on to talk about the NFL. What will the Browns do this weekend? Will they show up? Will they not? Finish up by talking about Donovan Mitchell's 71-point game. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben. That's Josh, and we are back. It's a new year, Josh. Happy New Year. It's 2023.
Happy New Year to you, Ben.
That is weird. It's 2023. Actually, I celebrated New Year's just a little bit before you did, but still. Same thing. It all makes sense. New year. Is it new year, new me? I don't even know how that saying goes.
I don't know. I shaved my beard though.
You did. My beard is still.
Your beard is still there though.
Still there. But how was your new year, Josh? And what are you excited about this year? Is there any new goals? I don't do resolutions. I do goals. Is there any goals you want to have for 2023 as you go through the year?
Haven't thought too far ahead on that, but I usually tend to fall in the camp that you do too. So we'll see as far as goals go, but I'd love to get a couple more new guests on our podcast if we're talking like in terms of baseline goals, like reach out and see if there's maybe a couple other big time guests that we can get, maybe become more of a broad show now that, you know, we're near the end of football season. We're going to have to be talking about some other sports here. So maybe just dabble a little bit into some of the other areas more than normal, but my new year was spent with family, with immediate family, with some of our cousins that live in the area. And then obviously watching the college football playoff, as I'm sure yours fell something along those lines as well.
Yeah, I mean, so my New Year's obviously over here in Hungary. If you don't know, that means you're just, I don't know, don't pay attention. But Hungary is 6 hours ahead of where you are all at. If you're in America, sometimes even more hours. So my New Year's involved us just kind of chilling, didn't do much. The day before was my grandma's funeral, so I watched that. So it's kind of in a weird moment of things. So we just kind of celebrated, had a good time, stayed in, didn't go outside. There's a lot of fireworks going around. It was just loud. So we did that, and then I watched the college football playoff, the second game, the Ohio State game, which was about 2:30 my time, so the game didn't get over until about 6. By the way, I had to do a New Year's Day brunch at like 11, so basically I had about 3 hours sleep, but I'm finally caught up now on sleep. So that was my New Year's Day, Josh. I know I do agree with you on the goals thing, because resolutions, I feel like, one, I'll try it and then just fail it. So I might as well have something to reach to rather than I'm going to do it all the time.
When you got a goal, that's something that you can see, that you can, I guess, measure. And when you go with a resolution with, say, I want to read more, that's super bland. It's like, okay, well, is that just reading one book when you read none? Like setting, I guess, like an achievable number or amount that you can see, that you can measure, is much better, because then I feel like that's a little bit more motivating than just, you know, oh, I want to exercise more, or I want to read more, or something like that. It's like, do you? And if you did, why did you not start that a month ago? And why do you got to wait till the start of the year to do that kind of thing? I don't know, but
no, I agree with you.
Like,
I agree with you.
When you got a goal, much better idea.
Hey, you know who also had a goal was all four of these teams this past weekend to win a national title. Two of those teams have advanced on. One was a surprise and one was almost a surprise. And Georgia and TCU both advance to the college football playoff final, which we will predict on the show, because I'll get the show out before the final happens. So that will be a fun thing to predict. But before we get to that, the final matchup there in the championship game, let's talk about, which game do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about TCU Michigan? Do you want to talk about Ohio State Georgia? Which one shall we talk about first, Josh?
Did you get to watch any of the Michigan TCU game?
I did get to watch the second half. I saw highlights of the first half. I've watched the second half.
Let's talk about that one, because it was the first game, and I feel like you'll want us to talk much more about the Buckeyes. So let's knock out Michigan TCU game out of the way. Yeah. Well, actually, we both are surprised by the final result of this one. Michigan just, to me, seemed very uncharacteristic. They didn't stick to anything that got them there all season long. They were trying trick plays that just seemed odd. They had so many uncharacteristic turnovers. They didn't seem too willing to stick to the ground and pound style that got them there. And the whole time I'm watching this game, I'm just kind of like, man, TCU isn't going to lose this, but it's still the first half. Michigan was a second half team all season long. And in this game, they also played much better in the second half, but losing by, I believe it was 5, was just a little bit of a too little too late. Were you shocked at the play calling that Jim Harbaugh or whoever's running the offense had in this game, Ben?
I am and I'm not. Well, what do we know about Jim Harbaugh? He's now lost 6 straight New Year's
The
Eve,
big
New Year's
game,
Day
the big
games.
game, the bowl game, the playoff game,
He
what
can't
have
win
you,
them.
has always been tough for Harbaugh for one
Yeah.
reason or another.
So for me, I'm not. I'm I'm a little shocked in the play calling, but I'm not shocked that it's happened because I think Harbaugh he gets this. And I'm not saying this is like a high. I know people are going to bash me because I'm a high. I'm not saying it out of this. I'm saying this in general. If you just watch the games when they play in big games, what happens? He gets like going completely against what he did to get there. Like I look, if you're Georgia or Ohio State, like you would have taken TCU on a platter. Like you would have said, I will take that matchup because you can
Absolutely.
win. And if you're Michigan, there is no way on God's green earth that you shouldn't have walked in there and dominated both sides of the ball. I was hearing David Cohn say, well, if Harbaugh stays, because there's rumors he's going to be leaving, which happens every year with Harbaugh.
Obligatory Harbaugh to the NFL rumors,
He
yes.
talks about how they'll succeed, but I'm like, yeah, but is that what you want as a Michigan fan? Yeah, you beat Ohio State 2 years in a row, but you can't win the big one. This was Michigan's year. If they beat TCU, they have a very good shot of winning the national title. I mean, I really do. And it is just it was fascinating to me, the play calling. Why didn't they stick to the run game more? Why are they putting their basically all of their season on McCarthy's back, who I still don't think is ready, and I don't know when he'll be ready for this big stage moments, because even against Ohio State, he didn't always look the best. I mean, he looked good at times, but didn't always look the
He
best.
just hit some wide open receivers that are
Yeah.
out there.
And so for
And even
me,
even in this game, I mean, there was a little bit of that. Like there were some open receivers out there that he was able to hit, but I mean, they were also kind of challenging him to make throws that he's just not there yet. And
yeah,
I thought that was odd that they were relying more on his arm and they waited
yeah,
again till the second half to even use his legs because that's another weapon that
yeah.
you got that they just didn't take advantage of.
And you could see the difference between a veteran QB who started 4 years now and a guy who has not started many games, because Max Duggan, yeah, his numbers weren't flashy. And in fact, some of his numbers were absolutely
Stat line was pretty
good.
average when you read the
You're
final,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. But what I'll say about Max Duggan is that he was grindy. He had grit. He had that passion. I think TCU's defense played well at times, and they were
While they
still a little
allowed over
lanky.
40, but
Yeah, but I still think this is the
they
thing
did
though.
come up with some big plays. They had a
Yeah,
couple defensive touchdowns there. They were able to come up with key turnovers when Michigan was in the red zone. That, I mean, that's 6 points that Michigan wasn't going to get that you can attribute to, TCU's defense or bad play calling in Michigan one way or another.
yeah.
But the defense did enough in this one.
And this is where I think is like, and this is my question for you, Josh, is if Harbaugh leaves now, right? Like, yeah, you beat Ohio State twice, but like what does that give Michigan fans, right? Like, is that almost if I that was Ryan Day, it would give me a bitter taste, right? Like, are you giving up on this team? You've built it up. I mean, obviously they're going to be good next year. They're going to be talented the next couple of years. That's my question, is like, you need to shut this down. If you're Harbaugh, if you're not going to leave, shut it down. But if you're going to leave, leave. Don't be doing this like weird balancing act that you're trying to do to see how much money you can make. I don't know what it is, but what's your thoughts on that whole like situation? Because I feel like that's not helping the program at all.
In a way, I mean, you look at where Michigan was when he took over and where they are now, the program has definitely progressed.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be making any assumptions that this is like, I guess, the ceiling for Michigan under Harbaugh. I think that there's still, we haven't seen Harbaugh win the big one yet. That doesn't mean necessarily that he's incapable, but
Yeah.
I guess there is a little bit there that's still to be desired. I mean, we said the same thing about Kirby Smart. Buckeye fans have been saying the same thing about Ryan Day.
Yeah.
So I just
I think some Michigan fans though.
If Harbaugh did leave now, though, it would be weird because with all the offensive talent coming back next year, Chuck, you're still going to have JJ McCarthy, Donovan Edwards. We'll see what Blake Corum decides to do, and there's still some young guys on that defense that really blossomed this year, like DJ Turner, that are going to be back. And if you left now, right when you build them up to this point, I guess, and back-to-back playoff losses. It's just kind of like, I think if you could have at least gotten to the championship, or I mean, ideally win it, then that would be like, okay, time to go back to NFL. But I think Harbaugh is more of a natural fit in the NFL anyway, just because he is kind of like a goofy guy with these kids when he tries to relate to them. And I mean, he has won in the NFL 3 straight NFC championship games. He took the 49ers too. So maybe, and I mean, I think every college coach kind of dreams of getting to the NFL. Saban, I mean, took a shot at the NFL to see what he could do there. Wasn't, his league. And I mean, the fact that Harbaugh has won up there, I'm sure he'd love to get another shot at it. So maybe coaching at the alma mater isn't enough, but I do agree with you. If I was him and my intention was to stay at Michigan just for, I guess, the sake of the fan base and the sake of recruits, like let him know, like, this is where I'm staying. I'm not going anywhere, and actually mean it and not leave 2 days
Yeah.
later like most of these other college coaches.
Well, even like Petrino, whatever, who was the head coach at Montana State, was the former coach at Louisville, coach Lamar Jackson. He became the offensive coordinator at UNLV, and then this just happened today. And then literally a month later, he's now left to go to Texas A&M. So I just think it's really fascinating how these coaches just do all these changes, whatever. But Josh, I do want to ask you about TCU, for example. What do you think TCU did? Was it kind of like Michigan was on an off day, or do you think TCU is legit? Like I know we keep saying this about TCU, but there's part of me that thinks this is a legit TCU team that can win the national title, but there's also part of me that's like, wow, they caught Michigan off on a really bad game and a very poor coaching game, and would this translate?
I think it's just that, I mean, TCU made an effort to put their best foot forward in this one. They've been getting counted out all year long, myself included. It's been like, okay, well, this will be the week that they'll lose. Well, this will be the week that they'll lose. And I mean, I didn't really even give them any chance in this game with Michigan because I mean, the way that they run defense, it's like they were gonna probably go 3-3-5 like they have been, and that just didn't seem to match up well against what Michigan likes to do, which is ground and pound and tear up defensive lines and beat you at the line of scrimmage. So I think I mean, a little bit of Michigan not putting its best foot forward too, but TCU came in after getting called soft most of the season, Cinderella, this, fraud, that. I mean, they came in with all the chips on their shoulder, all the motivation, and I mean, just the kind of grittiness that Max Duggan brings. I think that's what the team brought forward, and that's a big reason why they were able to win.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think TCU just they wanted it more.
Yeah, like
I just think they wanted it more.
how many people do you know of that picked TCU to win this in the media
Not many.
or any of our friends?
Not many.
Yeah.
I just think TCU wanted it more, and David Cohn did say that. Like, TCU just wanted it. Like, they wanted it more than what Michigan did. And like, as a Michigan fan, you got to be real ticked off of your team, right? They kept making fun of Ohio State fans for being like, destroying our team after the Michigan game. I'm like, really? Like, you had the perfect opportunity with the team you wanted to face. You didn't have to face Michigan. Sorry, you didn't have to face Georgia, and you didn't have to face Ohio State. You got the team you wanted to face, and you couldn't even do it.
I mean, everyone's saying that TCU should be the 4 seed because if there was any team that Georgia would have most wanted to play out of the field, it would have been TCU. They're saying that they were the
Exactly.
4 that, they're lucky to be here. Maybe they shouldn't have been at 3. Maybe they shouldn't have even been in the playoff because Alabama would be favored, and here they are going to the national championship. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a crazy game. It was a great game. Congrats to TCU. They're doing some amazing things down there. They're making you believe. Heading back to the national title game. I'm really excited to see what happens there. We'll talk about that in a second, but we are going to move on to the big one. The most this was it set so many records. It was a crazy game. It was 2:30 in the morning my time. I was sitting on this couch back here, like trying not to fall asleep, trying to stay awake. An up and down game. Georgia ends up winning 42-41. Josh, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first, or how do you want to do this?
Let me go first.
Okay, go ahead.
Because you did pick Ohio State to win, and I think I picked Georgia to win by over double digits. So
yes, you did.
I stand corrected, and most of the reason that Ohio State was able to keep it this close was the fact that CJ Stroud did everything that we knew he always could do, but just for one reason or another refused. He would never step into throws. He would never move up in the pocket. He'd never roll out. He would never, I mean, much less go and run on 3rd and 3, but even just like scramble around a little bit to buy time for his receivers. never would do that either. He would only back up, uh, stay in the pocket, trust his arm, ignore, I guess, what he could do with his legs. And in this game, I mean, right from the first quarter, we saw him making moves left and right. The chemistry he had with Marvin Harrison Jr. was just incredible while he was, on the move. And we saw CJ do things that I guess we always knew he could, but just for one reason or another, never would. And another thing too is we saw, I mean, there was a couple maybe head scratchers from Ryan Day, but he
He called a
also
good game.
seemed on it too. I can't remember one stupid bubble screen call that he had in this one. Maybe I guess the biggest thing that you could debate that maybe he made a mistake on was, the end of the game, you got 2 timeouts, 4th and 1. Why kick a 50-yarder when that's really hard in college? Why not trust your offense to maybe get a little bit closer? You can still stop the clock a couple more times and make that field goal a little bit more manageable. But, I mean, hats off to Ohio State. I'm sure there's a little bit of, man, why didn't we get this kind of play out of these guys that could have resulted in maybe a win over Michigan this year? Maybe it could have resulted in a Big Ten championship. Maybe CJ Stroud's legacy would be different. But that's kind of, I guess, my thoughts on this whole
Yeah.
thing is just Ohio State. I mean, they put their best foot forward. I don't think that there's anything that they could have done differently to maybe push this ahead. I know health wasn't on their side in this one with Stover leaving and then Harrison eventually leaving. But yeah, kudos to Ohio State. Georgia, though, I mean, they fought hard at the end to win it. Stetson Bennett, I think, had about 200 yards in that fourth quarter. And then while I just praised Ryan Day, I guess you also got to be thinking at the same time, why did we pay Jim Knowles $2 million when he allowed over 40 points in our 2 biggest games of the season? But still only year 1 for Jim. So like I said with, I guess, some of those other coaches, got to give him time, I guess, to, get situated. But I guess that's kind of my thoughts on the game. Now I'll flip it over to you, Ben. Similar thoughts or
Yeah.
anything different that you
Yeah.
saw?
I think the Knowles thing, I do want to point out that Knowles in his first year with Oklahoma State, their defense was not that great. It was good, it wasn't great. It took him 2 to 3 years to really get his system going. So that's why I'm not too worried about Knowles. I know people are mad at him. And also, Latham Ransom, you're a Division I athlete. You should not be falling over running with a wide receiver. I'm
Just
sorry.
Ohio State guys and falling over, man.
I
It's
don't
just
don't even ask me. It's weird. It just
the
happens.
running backs, Travion Henderson, tripping and falling
It's
over nothing.
ridiculous.
Lathan Ransom. I mean, other
It
safeties, Tanner McAllister, I think, has had plays like that. And yeah, it's
this
just,
is
I guess you're going to have to hire a coach to teach guys how to stand. I don't
I
know.
guess I don't know. My thoughts on the game. First off, if there's any Ohio State fan out there right now, and I mean this like 100% right now, stop saying that Ryan Day needs to be fired and stop saying that CJ Stroud does not have a legacy. Did you see what CJ Stroud put out there? That man gave every last ounce of his body to this university and just tried his hardest to win that football game. On it was like 3rd and 6, he runs for 30 yards to get a first down and get you in field goal range, and heck, could even score a touchdown depending on what happens at the end of that game. He made throw after throw after throw. Marvin Harrison goes out. He does not care. He's going to go win that game no matter what. Ryan Day, that is the most enthusiasm Ryan Day has ever shown on the sideline, and I absolutely loved it. His play calling was on point. This was the best game of Ryan Day's coach calling career. And yes, the defense lets you down at times, but also you hit 2 field goals at the end of the game where you score 2 field goals, especially the last field goal where you could have went and tried to get a touchdown, right? And this is what I'll say. CJ Stroud cemented himself first off in making a lot more money because I now believe it's truly now between him and Bryce Young. There was a talk so that he'd slip down to 3 or 4 in the
Anyone
quarterback
that
line.
still thinks Will Levis is in this discussion
There
is
is no
just
way.
dumb at this point, man.
That is true because
Absolutely no way.
CJ Stroud, what have I said all year long, Josh? What is the one thing I've said about CJ Stroud all year long when it comes to running the ball?
When it comes to running the ball, I guess that he can and just chooses not to.
Exactly. Right. Like, what do we see him here? Like, that man played like a man possessed. Like, he did not care about his body. He didn't care what happened. He's going to get that first down. He's going to get what it has to for this team. What could have Ohio State done differently? I have 3 things. First thing, I think they could have run a little more aggressively in the second and third quarter. Finding more of a balance, I think, could have helped them in some cases or
Did
scenario.
they was it 10 rushing yards in the first half? Is that
Yeah,
right?
they did not run the ball well, and then part of that is because they didn't. It felt like they didn't have the right back in there for the right role, and then Mayan Williams wasn't healthy. We were told he was healthy, which
Yeah, mine
obviously
clearly,
wasn't
like,
true.
a couple
Um,
plays in, you could tell
yeah,
he
I was like,
wasn't
great.
he shouldn't
Well,
be
here we
playing.
go.
Yeah.
But hats off to Xavier Johnson. That man is a Swiss Army knife. I've never seen a guy that can do basically covering kicks, covering punts, kick return, running back, wide receiver, played on defense for a snap, I think. Just the guy's nuts. But first off is run the ball better. Second thing, that last drive, I had a lot of people here. I hear a lot of people saying, well, why did he run that ball when it was like, I think it was 2nd and 8, or it was 2nd and 8. They ran the ball for like a 4-yard gain instead of just like throwing the ball more. And I get why they did that. They did that because they thought they could catch Georgia off guard, get a few yards. That didn't happen, right? You had to call timeout. So it's a little frustrating there, but I understand why Ryan Day did it. But this is my problem with the end of the game is that you didn't try to get the ball in the center of the field. Even if you take a 50-yarder, 50 yards is a lot harder from the hash than it is from dead center. And I think you as a play caller and as a quarterback, CJ Stroud has to realize, hey, we need to get this ball. I don't care what I have to do, whether that's taking a knee or whatever. I need to get this ball in the middle of the field so Noah Ruggles has the best shot he can. And the third thing would be is the defense you have to find ways to get stops. And for me, the falling down is inexcusable. All their big play. I mean, literally, you take away Georgia's big plays, Josh, this game's a totally different ball game, and Ohio State wins this game without a doubt because
And
big
it was
plays are
the
what led
Georgia
to it.
yeah, and it was the Georgia wide receivers too. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I think Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers each had just one catch in the first half. I can't remember what they finished with, but
Brock Bowers finished with
that's
3 catches. That was it.
yeah, that's that we were talking about, how Ohio State's defense is like the second best at defending running backs and tight ends in the pass, and how important that was going to be because that's who Georgia throws the ball to. But I think what people were ignoring was maybe Ohio State was so good at defending those positions because their opponents were just hitting their receivers deep because that's what was available, and
Yeah.
they were just taking what the defense gives them in a way. And we kind of saw that from Georgia. They had some of the receivers that were healthy for the first time this season. I believe, what was it, AD Mitchell? Is that his
Yeah.
name, was one of them? Yeah, I mean, there's guys like that
Yeah.
just haven't been with the team all year long. So in a way, this was like the best version of Georgia's offense, and only Ohio
Right.
State faced them this year.
And Ohio State is not deep on the D backs, which by the way, after the game, we just
Yeah.
found out we're losing a cornerback to the transfer portal. We did just get a safety from the transfer portal. So but still they're very thin at that position. That position needs to be fixed going into next year. That's one of my
It's going
things
to be
I'll talk.
interesting seeing, I guess, who from that group also maybe declares, because I know there was a little bit of buzz about Ransom maybe declaring early now because of the season he had and stuff. So
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
never
It'll be
know.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see. But one thing I do want to, two more things I want to say is that one, people, most of Ohio State fans have been fine with Noah Ruggles, but like you can't blame this guy. I mean, you put the world of pressure on this guy, a college kicker, to hit a 50-yarder from the left hash. Do you know how hard that kick is? That kick is
It's darn near
extremely hard.
impossible, and I wouldn't have even attempted it with any kicker
Oh
unless I
no.
had Jake Moody. Like, that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying, like, in that situation, I'm probably going for it on 4th and 1.
Yeah. And so that was weird. I will say there's 2 calls I want to talk about, Josh, and I think you know which ones I want to talk about. First one, targeting, that should have been targeting. I am sorry. Where is it? And Joel Klatt said this, like, where are we doing with these rules? How does it go from a flag? Because obviously I know you can overturn it, but he did make helmet contact because Harrison was legit knocked out. Like if you look at him, he was legit knocked out for a second. He didn't hit his head on the ground. Like there's no way that man like got a concussion supposedly, or had an head injury. To me, it was also leading with the helmet. He made slight contact with the helmet. In my opinion, there wasn't enough to overturn it from targeting. Josh, what is your opinion? Because that changed the ball game, right? Because if they get that call, it's 1st and goal at the 1-yard line. You most likely score a touchdown. Now that's the point swing, and then it's a whole different ball game. What is your thought on that call? I know there's a lot of mixed. I know 5th and Goal did a poll, and it said 65% of people said that it should have been targeting. What was your thought on that call?
My thought on it was, I thought it was weird that they did pick up the flag, but I don't think the kid should have been ejected that made the hit. I think the biggest point of contact was shoulder on shoulder. I also very much hate this rule and how it penalizes defenders for playing defense when it's most of the time poor offense. Like CJ Stroud put Marvin or whichever receiver was supposed to be there. I think it was just supposed to be a throwaway out of the back of the end zone that didn't get out. Puts his receiver in a bad position. The Georgia defender comes in to make a play and then he's penalized for it. But I mean, there was a little bit of helmet on helmet there, but I think the majority of the hit was shoulder on shoulder. I don't think that warranted an ejection, but I was surprised that they picked that flag up.
And also, to be honest, you think about it though too. When Harrison left that game, the offense was not the same. And
Yeah, I
and
mean, Marvin was going to be out of the game with a concussion, regardless of if they left the
yeah,
flag down or not. But I mean, the way that he played in that first half, it was, I mean, that really forced Ohio State's offense to
I
change,
think
I think.
wouldn't you say, Josh, that he was a little mad of not getting the Blitnikoff? I think that was a little message to the world saying, "Hey, hey, I'm the best receiver right now in college football." I think that's my opinion, but I don't know.
Perhaps.
I will say this, Josh. I want to touch on this. Um, and I want to touch quickly on Georgia here too before I get into that question I was going to ask you. But we also know the fake punt. It was a great timeout by Kirby Smart and his group to catch that because that also could have changed the whole game on that fake punt. But that sucks as a High State fan. That's now two fake punts they couldn't get going.
What did
That
they
would have
say?
changed.
That was the fake punt that was supposed to work against, was it
Yeah,
Michigan or
exactly. Yeah, it
something?
was. Yeah, yeah. So, Georgia played a great game. Stetson Bennett. I mean, the man's not going to be a great NFL quarterback, but he's going to be kind of the Tim Tebow, JT Barrett of the world of amazing college football player that will go down in history. Their defense, I will say this. I want to say this because I think needs to happen, Josh, that this Ohio State team, no one can look to me in the eye and say this Ohio State team didn't belong because they just made a very, very good defense look very susceptible to many different things. And they made this very good team almost like people don't realize, like, this is what's fascinating to me is like, people, do you realize that Ohio State was leading this game pretty much the whole game until the last 50 seconds? Like, Ohio State was beating the national champion, the best team in college football. That's how close they were. And I know you can't, as a Ohio State fan, we don't go on, well, you were close. No, we want to win that game. But at the end of the day, you have to look at the positives because I think there's been so many negatives, Josh, with the Ohio State program. You've heard it. I've heard it. Ohio State's done. They're going downhill. Ryan Day should be fired. If this proved anything, is Ohio State made a message. They said, we're here and we're going to stay and we're going to continue to be here. And it's very fascinating. There's a lot of what ifs. What if Smith and Jigba was healthy all year? What if this defense was healthy all year? What if
What if
this
CJ
running
would
back?
have played with
Yes,
half that much heart the whole
yeah,
entire season?
that's what I'm saying. If CJ would have done this, and someone said this, they said if CJ would have played the way he did, he would have had a Joe Burrow season. If
That's
he would
why I
have
can
done what he did,
understand,
he
I
would have had
guess,
Joe Burrow
why
season.
some Ohio State fans got mixed feelings on it. Because to me, it's just kind of like, well, too little, too late, CJ. We could have maybe been the one seed in these playoffs if you would have played like this all year. We beat Michigan, we win the Big Ten, and you're probably walking out of this season with a Heisman, like you said, a Joe Burrow-esque
Yeah,
season, probably.
yeah, and it is frustrating, but at the same time, I look forward to next year as an Ohio State fan. I do believe, Josh, that Ohio State will be up there again. I mean, what do you think, Josh? I mean,
So,
you think they'll be up there again?
is the goal now, if you're an Ohio State
Yeah.
fan, to donate as much to the NIL collective as possible so you can pay CJ $10 million a year, which is more than what he'd make in the NFL as a rookie next year, so that he stays and he can have that
Nah,
season that we're
no,
talking
I
about he should
think
have had.
no, I think you let the guy go where he feels to go, and I think Kyle McCord's the guy. I mean, I think Kyle McCord, he's been waiting in the wing. You get him ready. You're gonna have Travion Henderson healthy. You're hoping that Eichenberg comes back. There's talk that he's not coming back, but there's a thought he's going to come back. Stover might be back. You have Harrison. You have Mbuka, who had the two of the best seasons ever as receivers. You have a bunch of these guys coming back. I'm interested to see what happens. But that's enough time about Ohio State. I'm sure we'll spend time throughout the next few months talking about Ohio State football, just give you updates on what's going on with Ohio State football. But we're going to stop talking there. We are going to move on to preview the national title game, and then we'll briefly go over to the New Year's Six Bowl. So, Josh, give me a prediction for this TCU versus Georgia game. This is one of the hardest games I've ever had to pick because I've seen Georgia be very susceptible to the pass and a lot of other things. What is your prediction? Go.
Yeah, dude. I mean, geez, TCU's offense kind of runs like maybe at a slightly, I guess, less impressive clip than Ohio State. Very similar. Maybe Ohio State's offense 1A, TCU's 1B. So I could easily see this game being close. But at the same time, it also wouldn't shock me if Georgia won this game like 41-3 either. But I also feel like I need to finally put respect on TCU's name. But then if once I do,
They're
you
gonna
know that
lose.
they're gonna let me down, right? That's just how it goes. So it's tough to say, man. But I mean, Georgia's the other thing that we learned in this game too was I would have thought that if Ohio State put up over 40 and made this a track meet, that Georgia wouldn't be able to keep up offensively. That too, I was wrong about.
Yeah.
And uh I feel like Georgia and Michigan run a similar kind of offense, and Michigan was also able to put up over 40 on TCU. So maybe this game ends up being like a 40 something to 40 something too. Let's rock with man, this is a tough one, dude. I'm also slightly hoping for this too, but what if we had like a Georgia 41-38 final?
You know, Josh, I'm right with you. I hate to pick against TCU because every time this year I picked against TCU, they've just freaking made me look silly. I I saw Georgia play, and if we get the Georgia that we saw in the fourth quarter, not the first three quarters because they played terrible. If we get the Georgia that played in the fourth quarter, Georgia could win this game by 3 touchdowns. But I believe it's going to be a very close game. I'm going to have Georgia winning 35-31. I think it's going to be kind of similar to the High State game, but at the end of the day, I think Georgia's offense and defense will come in at the end of the game. Also, I do want to say that Jalen Carter needs to step up because he looked so out of shape, so tired,
He
did
was
not seem
resting a
like he
lot of
cared.
snaps in that game, wasn't he?
He was so out of shape. I mean, he literally couldn't keep up. And so that's what also is like, they were worried about him. And I'm like, he did nothing. So hats off to High State. But yeah, that's our predictions for that. Josh, is there any of these games you want to go over before we move on to the NFL? Is there any of these New Year's Six bowls you want to touch on?
Yeah, why don't we talk about the Rose Bowl first? Just because I feel like Penn State's been
You're
a team
Utah.
that's been
You're
well, not even just that, but it's just like Penn State, it's been
so inconsistent.
well, not even inconsistent. It's just been tough to, I guess, gauge them
Yeah,
because the only two good teams they played this year were Ohio State and Michigan,
got
who are
beat.
playoff teams. And yeah, lose by double digits in both of those. One on your home field, I think one on the road there. But Utah, I felt like was going to be a perfect matchup to learn a lot about them because I feel like Utah is much more so on their level of play, like maybe a tier two college football
Yeah.
program. And uh, with the offensive guys, most of them being in this game, like you got freshman running backs, you got Clifford playing his final game. He obviously wants to do that. I believe both starting wide receivers were playing for Penn State in this one. We were really going to learn, I guess, what kind of a team Penn State was. And I mean, kudos to James Franklin and Penn State. I did not see this season coming in
Did not.
hindsight. I thought Penn State was going to finish about 6-6. I kind of saw them maybe being about the same kind of program as Auburn, to be honest. Just what they did last year, I would have never guessed that this season would have been any better with Clifford coming back, for his 10th season in the league, freshman running backs again that are unproven. It's just like, I don't see how this team's going to take a step forward, especially losing your top weapon, Jahan Dotson, in the draft too. It's just like, I don't see much happening from Penn State, and they did so well this year. Icing on the cake with the Rose Bowl. Utah still not a bad team. I obviously was the highest on them and way too high on them to start the season, but at the end of the day, they're back-to-back Pac-12 champions, back-to-back Rose Bowl appearances. Maybe next year Utah if they get Cam Rising to come back and a couple other pieces, they can finally win that Rose Bowl. But hats off to both teams on successful seasons, but for both program standards. And it's going to be interesting to see Penn State because you got Drew Aller coming back next year, a large majority of the offense. Like I said, maybe they can steal one of those games against Ohio State or Michigan next year.
Yeah, Penn State it looks really good. It's like the one thing that I know Penn State fans hate hearing this, but it's always like they're the third team in the Big Ten. Like they never there's a year or so, there's a year or two where they'll slip into number two. But they'll never be the best team in the Big Ten, and they're never like the middle pack. They're always at like that third tier, right? Um, And Penn State's so weird because against Ohio State and Michigan, they just looked bad. They just did not look like Penn State. And then
They
this game,
did.
it's
They
like,
didn't look like they
what's
belonged
going
on the
on?
field.
Part of that is because it is the last game, hopefully, for their quarterback, which who knows? He could be back for another 5
Can
years.
Sean Clifford come back?
Yeah, who knows? But their running backs are very good. Their defense played very well against, a Utah team that was kind of didn't seem like they were really themselves. But they Utah did beat USC and showed that USC is not that great. And Utah has proven that they belong. They're a solid program. It's just the recruiting battle they're going to have struggles with, and the same with Penn State. I don't know how great they're going to do with recruiting, but yeah, Penn State could pull off one of those upsets. I think Ohio State will be not down, but they're going to be unknown next year. They're going to have a new quarterback.
Unknown. I mean, whoever takes over
Yeah,
quarterback, whether it's McCord, whether it's a kid that they get in the portal, or Devin Brown, who knows who it's going to be. But
yeah,
I mean, Ohio State's gonna. It's like you said, and then if Harbaugh takes off, or maybe one of his coordinators like Jesse Minter. I mean, that's a hot name right now. Maybe he gets pulled away. It's just I mean, Michigan has a lot of talent coming back, but in terms of coaching and I guess schematics, they could be a little bit different next year too.
Yeah, and it is wide open. Who knows? But hats off to both those teams. A great game. Josh, what is another game that you want to touch on here on today's show?
Well, you brought up USC and Utah showing that USC is not all that great,
Oh,
and I
they're
mean
not.
USC kind of showed
They're
again
not.
that they're not all that
Lost to
great. That
Tulane.
I mean, there's still something missing, and it's
It's
definitely on
called
the
a
defensive
defense.
side of the
It's called
ball.
defense.
Yes, it is. This defense relied
So
on
bad.
turnovers much of the season, and in games where they couldn't, force 4 or 5 turnovers, it usually didn't go well for them. So, I mean, nothing, no issue on offense. Caleb Williams, I mean, winning the Heisman, he's coming back next season. I'm sure Lincoln Riley will have
He won't win it
no
again
lack
because of
of offensive
politics.
talent.
He won't win it
Well,
again because of politics.
it's always got to be somebody else, but this USC offense isn't going to be lacking next year. It's just honestly at this point, I wonder why Lincoln Riley is so loyal to Alex Grinch because
He
I'm
sucked at Ohio
sure
State. He
I'm
stuck at Ohio State.
I'm sure you saw the stat Lincoln Riley, six
Yeah, I saw that.
14-point leads he's
Yeah.
blown since 2017. That's more than any coach during that span. And a large majority of that is because of Alex Grinch. So I don't understand why this guy still has a job, why people on TV still talk very highly of him. Maybe that's a change that Lincoln's going to have to eventually make. But at least now that he's in the Pac-12, eventually going to be in the Big Ten, uh, the discussion always was you can never recruit good talent to the Big 12, but now that he's at USC, I mean, they've had good defenders. I mean, you grew up watching Brian Cushing, Ray Mauanuga, and Clay Matthews all in the same linebacker room like I did. They've had people like Troy Polamalu in the secondary and Taylor Mays, absolute studs. So we'll see if given time. I mean, Lincoln Riley did a great job grabbing guys from the portal, from his former team over at Oklahoma as well. And we're going to see if, I guess, in due time, he can recruit a stellar defense, and we'll find out if Alex Grinch can actually call a defense or if he's actually going to have to get fired. But kind of my thoughts on USC, very close, but still
And
lacking on one side of the
hats off
football.
to Tulane. Tulane played a great game.
Two
That
and
catch
10
at
the
the
year before, and now
they,
what are they? They're
they were
freaking
10 and
some bowl
12. They're
champion. I can't remember their
12 and
bowl
2.
game, but
They were 12 and
yeah.
2. And the catch at the end of the game was pretty awesome. I will say this. We also shouldn't talk about catches because Michigan should have had a touchdown. That's all I'm going to say. But it's great. It was made me laugh. I will say that, by the way, Michigan losing made my night a little bit easier. By the way, Josh, when Ohio State lost. But talking about USC, when they do get to the Big Ten, how crazy is that going to be to see if Jim Harbaugh's still there? See a Jim Harbaugh team, to see a Lincoln Riley offense versus a Ryan Day
Maybe a
offense,
Chip Kelly UCLA
and a
team.
Chip Kelly offense as well. Like it's going to be nuts. But
And a
yeah,
Matt Rule Nebraska team and a Luke
yeah,
Fickle Wisconsin
exactly.
team.
Crazy.
We got
The Big
big
Ten,
time coaching in the
Big
Big
Ten
Ten.
is going to be better than the SEC in 3 years. Watch me. I said it. I said it. Bold
We'll
prediction.
see, man.
Big Ten's going to
That's
be better
even
than the
with
SEC.
or not TC,
Because
Texas and
remember,
Oklahoma joining the conference too.
in the SEC, you have Texas A&M. We spend a lot of money but can't win. You have Florida, who just doesn't win, and then you have all the others. I at the end of the day, I think with USC is that they need to figure out a defense because as Joel Klatt? No, someone else said this. I think it was Joel Klatt. Yeah, he said like basically he feels the USC is wasting Caleb Williams' like generational talent because they have no defense and they're not going to win many games with not a great defense. And so I'm interested to see what happens with them. It will be fascinating to watch what happens with Lincoln Riley in the offseason. What do they do, and how that all works out. All I can say as a High State fan, I'm not sorry. That is what we got for that game. Is there one more game you want to recap
I
before we
think
move
there's
on?
one more big one worth noting, and that's the Orange Bowl with Tennessee and Clemson.
Yeah.
That game, Tennessee did not have Cedric Tillman. They did not have Jalen Hyatt. They did not have Hendon Hooker. And Clemson was going to have the better of the two quarterbacks on the team this season starting in this game. And my gosh,
Did you laugh?
I
Did you
got
smile a
you
little
got
bit?
to hat off to Joe Milton, man. I mean, that guy, we saw him try at Michigan. We saw him try initially at Tennessee last year. And I mean, kid balled out, plain and simple, without, I guess, his team's best wide receivers, too, on top of it.
Did you smile a little bit seeing Dabo lose? Didn't it just bring a little smile to your face? It always does for me.
Not so much a smile. It's just kind of like, what the heck, man? Like, trying to pick these bowl games is so tough, man.
Oh, my bowl record on the ESPN app was I was literally like, I think I was 4 for whatever. Like I was literally awful. Like it was the worst I've ever done. It was so bad. I didn't even.
Mine wasn't much better.
It was
While you
so
share your
bad.
thoughts, I'm gonna look up where I
Yes. So
am at
Joe,
right now.
yeah, Joe Milton, he had a great game. Again, Tennessee. I think Tennessee's sticking around to play. We'll see what happens next year. They're losing a lot, but we'll see. But all I know is that Clemson, they made Chris happy because I know he really loves seeing Clemson lose. And I think Clemson, to be honest, Josh, I don't think Clemson. I think we might be seeing the end of the Clemson dynasty. I don't see how they go up from here. That's my thing. What is your
Yeah,
thing there?
I'm laughing right now because wait, that's something else. Never mind. But I agree with you, dude. It's gonna be
It's the end of the Clemson
tough
dynasty.
for, I guess, Clemson to come up from here unless uh Klubnik is that guy. And I mean, you can just chalk this up to maybe it being bowl season and Clemson not being dialed in. I don't know who from their team opted out in this one, but I know Tennessee wasn't anywhere near at full strength.
Yeah.
So the fact that they won this was wild. I'm at 72.9% for college bowl pick'em.
Hold on. I'll look. Hold on. Let me
I'll
look.
tell you my highest confidence games too and how I fared in those. So I was most confident in LSU winning against Purdue. That
Oh
happened.
gosh.
63-7, boy. Wow. Second most confident in Florida State beating Oklahoma, and they only won by 3, but they got the W, so that's all that matters in confidence points. My third most confident game, and this was I locked these picks in before I knew Bryce Young and Will Anderson were playing. Kansas State to beat Alabama. Obviously, I was wrong about that one. 25-point win for Alabama in that one. My fourth highest confidence was Washington defeating Texas. That was the case. My fifth highest confidence was Oregon State defeating Florida, and as we already talked about on this podcast, no brainer. And then a couple other high confidence picks here. Jackson State, for the second year in a row, I had them as a top 10 confidence pick. They couldn't get it done in bowl season. Screw you, Deion Sanders. Toledo beat Liberty. That was another high confidence pick. Georgia defeating Ohio State. That was another high confidence pick. Michigan defeating TCU. That was a high confidence pick that failed. And then wrapping up my top 10, Tennessee did not beat, or I mean, Clemson did not defeat Tennessee. So I hit about 6 of my top 10 confidence games.
So I was in this basically bowl pick'em group. So basically I just picked the games, right? It's in the Fifth and Goals group, Fifth and Goal podcast. And for the regular season, I finished third. So I finished really good in the regular season. But in the bowl season, right? I am 23rd. There are 4 people below me. I am 23rd. I went 20 of 22. I'm in the 39 percentile. This is the worst I've ever done. It's awful. But
it's tough, man. It's tough to pick bowl games, dude.
It is tough. And that is what's crazy about college football. We love college football, but I think that's enough talking about college football. We are going to move to the NFL because, well, a lot of things have happened in the NFL, and one is the Browns still are not going to the playoffs, which are we shocked?
But they can stop the Steelers from making the playoffs.
That is true, which we will talk about that here. And I do want to say that we are playing. I just want to say this now before we get into this. I could have said at the beginning of the show as well. We are playing for Damar. I think his last name's Hamlin. Is it Hamlin?
Damar Hamlin.
Yeah, Damar Hamlin. from both Josh and I, to his family, to his teammates, friends, those that are affected. You never want to see that. You never want to see, someone, their life be um, pretty much stopped at one point and having to come back to life. So, yeah, our thoughts and prayers are out them. We're not going to go into detail. You guys have heard enough of it from everyone else from every side of the globe. So we do just want to say that from us to him and his family. So, but moving on from that, we are going to talk about the Cleveland Browns, because we're going to briefly talk about them. There's not a lot to talk on the NFL other than that there are a lot of teams that are winning and they're going to go to the playoffs. We will do a playoff preview after this week, right? Yeah. So next week we'll do a playoff preview.
Yes, it would be, yeah.
Yeah. Next week we'll do a playoff preview. So this week we're just going to talk about the Browns, recapping their last game. Josh, what did you think about them versus the Commanders? Because even though Watson's numbers weren't like flashy, they were still really solid. He played a really good game, probably the best game he's played as a Brown. How do you feel?
Well, it also helps when Carson Wentz is the opposing
That is
quarterback.
true.
I don't know why Taylor Heineke is benched in this situation
They're
when
starting Sam
they
Howell
got
this week.
when they got playoff spots on the line and they stick Carson Wentz in here. I don't know why you have a quarterback controversy at this point when you're a team trying to fight for the playoffs. But yeah, clearly a wrong decision over there by Ron Rivera. But yeah, like you said, I think this there were some odd calls in this one, like typical Kevin Stefanski fashion, calling stupid 4th and goal
It's so dumb.
plays, with the Deshaun Watson QB sneak out of the shotgun or whatever the heck. I don't know. Later in the game, he fixed that by bringing in Jacoby Brissett to run those sneaks, and it was much less than 3 yards. But I think so far from the small sample size, yeah, like you said, this was Deshaun Watson's best game. Um, and if you're a Browns fan, hopefully that continues to be the trend as he gets more time after being off for 2 years, because this man's making over 50 million a year, I believe, for the next 4 years, and you have no first round picks to make up for I guess the lack of production if he ends up never improving. So like you said, nice job for the Browns.
Defense played
Ohio
well.
opened up. Yeah, another good play for the defense too. Denzel Ward made a couple big plays I
Grant
saw,
Delpit.
and Ben, also now that sports betting is legal in Ohio, the bet to get Cleveland fans and I guess people in Ohio in general to start betting on DraftKings and FanDuel was as long as the Browns score 1 point, a $50 bet wins $100. I did that both on DraftKings and FanDuel. So if you guys ever need any betting advice, I mean, I've made a lot of money so far. I'd be happy to give any kind of tips in that regard. But I guess yeah, not a bad week for the
Yeah.
Browns. And now you're moving into a game against Pittsburgh, which was a close game the first time around, I believe week 3 when Jacoby Brissett played. Pittsburgh's got playoffs riding on the line right here. Cleveland obviously doesn't, but they do have spoiler. And Myles Garrett already said in an interview that they consider Pittsburgh their biggest rival, and that if they can't make the playoffs, they're not going to let them do it either. But will that be the case, Ben? Is Myles
That
speaking facts or cap?
he's speaking facts, and mainly because I want to not have to hear my good friend here in Hungary, who's American, but he lives in the building next to us. He's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and trust me, I do not want to hear this for the next year. I just can't. So yes, he is right, and I do want to say about the defense, Grant Delpit, who everyone was saying was the worst pick, he was terrible and everything like that because he'd been playing terrible the first 7 games of the year, has had like 4 picks in the last 6 games. Grant Delpit, remember, he was the Thorpe winner, and then tore his Achilles, I believe, or knee, or one of the two things. Got
About every
drafted.
injury you could
Yeah,
have in the knee he's
got
had.
drafted by the Browns, and now is looking like the All Pro everyone thought he would be. So hats off to Grant Delpit. I think he's the guy for the future. Get rid of Johnson because he's just trash in the back. So go ahead and get Grant Delpit a bigger deal. But to move on to what you're saying about the Steelers, I just think this Browns team is playing for the future. And that's the one thing I think that is good, is that they're not quitting because they know they have to get ready for next year. Like, what is this team going to look like next year? I'm going to do this. I'm going to let's do 2 bold predictions, Josh. So we'll give a score prediction, then 2 bold predictions. So my score prediction is the Browns are going to win. I'm going to go 21-17 Browns win. I think it's going to be a
Is
slugfest.
that the final score from the first game?
It might have been actually, but
I think it was
I didn't think of that. So
21-17 or 21-18. I think we got 21 though.
okay, I'll go 21. I'll go 21-16. Okay, we'll just make it up there.
Slightly
21-16.
change it.
And then I'm going to go. My first bold prediction is that Nick Chubb is going to run for 150 and 3 touchdowns. He has not ran for a rushing touchdown, I think, in like 8 weeks now. He at one point was leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns. He has not scored one in like 8 weeks or 7 weeks. So I want to say 150 yards for Nick Chubb on the ground, 3 touchdowns. And then my second bold prediction, and this one might be stupid outlandish, but I think it might happen, is that I'm going to say Deshaun Watson throws for 300 yards, rushes for 75, and has 5 total touchdowns. So 8. So hold on. That's my bold prediction. Okay. That doesn't mean, listen, that doesn't mean it goes with my score, because everyone's going to do math and they're going to wait a minute. How does Deshaun Watson score 5 touchdowns?
But they only scored 21 points.
That's what I'm saying. My bold prediction has nothing to do with the score. That's just like my bold prediction and like what I think could happen. But my realistic
you don't
score,
really believe it then.
I do believe it, because I'm not going to
go make your final score Browns 42.
Josh, I'm not doing this, Josh. I'm not going to let you persuade what I believe bold prediction should be. Go, Josh. Before I get mad at myself.
I just feel like my final score is going to match my bold predictions a little bit better than yours. So
shut up.
I don't think this is going to be high scoring. I, in fact, think this could potentially be a boring, gritty game. So if you love defensive football, or just hate points in general, this might be for you. So I'm sticking with a Cleveland 24-18-ish victory. Bold predictions in this one include there will be 4 total turnovers.
Okay. 4 turnovers.
I don't know if that means 4 by one team or 2 and 2, but I think it's going to be not very fun offense with Kenny Pickett going against Deshaun Watson. So 4 turnovers in this one. And then if I had to make a second bold prediction, let's go with 2 Cleveland Browns receivers finishing with the most receiving yards in this game.
I like that one.
Let's go with that. The 2 leading receivers in this game will both be from Cleveland.
I like that, and I'm going to throw a bonus one in there for me. I'm going to say Myles Garrett has 3 sacks. Myles Garrett has 3 sacks because I think he loves playing against Pittsburgh for some reason, and he just he loves hitting people.
The occasion.
He loves hitting people with his helmet. So let's
hopefully. Could you imagine, dude, if Kenny Pickett for one reason or another gets benched and they bring in Mason Rudolph? Would it be Mason Rudolph or would it be Mitch Trubisky at this point? I'm not sure.
It'd probably be Mitch Trubisky. But that is our bold predictions, our prediction for the Browns game. Honestly, I've lost track of who's winning. All I know is that I'm winning. I don't know the actual total number.
Well, we haven't actually made predictions the last 2 games. The Saints game and the Redskins game, we did not.
That is true.
We missed those. So that was opportunity for me to catch up, and I never brought it up on the podcast. So it's partially my fault.
Can we talk about how the Commanders truly lost because their ugly new mascot? Did you see their? It is so bad. I'm sorry.
It's interesting, man. It's I think the pig has been around in Washington though a little while, hasn't he? Even when they were called the Redskins.
I don't know, man, but
I'm pretty sure I've seen one fan base with pig noses before, and
it just looks so bad, man.
I'm gonna see if I can find a Washington back when they were Redskins fans wearing pig noses. Because if it is new, that is kind of odd that they would choose that for Commanders, but I think it's been a thing.
But you don't want a commando pig. Like, that just looks weird.
A commando pig.
One's a commando. It's like a communist pig, but no, that wouldn't be. That makes sense though. The pig's fat. It makes sense. They've buffed it up, and then they're gonna use it, in the wrong way. But I guess I don't know.
So I found this photo, the Washington Redskins Hogettes. And it's a bunch of guys, it looks like, dressed as, I guess, pigs if they were women. And they all have pig noses and I guess, like, fat lady dresses. And it's
disturbing. What is wrong with
I gotta
Washington?
See if I can find a date on this. Because they do have, like, Redskins gear. But, and then they have a pig pen in the stadium. What the heck? And they have Hogette bobbleheads. This is a
Josh, what's wrong with Washington? Just
Now I'm just gonna Google now Washington Redskin Hoggats and see if I can get
okay.
a read on that.
Don't go down the drain, man. You don't want to go down that hole.
Don't
Who
go
knows?
down the rabbit hole. I might find something that I don't want to see. Well, we research very thoroughly on this podcast. So the Hoggets were a group of fans of the Washington Redskins who wore women's dresses, garden party hats, and pig snouts. The group was founded in 1983 by Michael Torbert and became a regular fixture at Redskins games for nearly 30 years. So I guess pig
What?
noses have been around for a while. If you
Oh,
didn't know, the Hoggets, I think that what we do in Cleveland with the dog pound is a little bit cooler than that, but there you
oh,
have it, Ben.
that is our fun fact of the day here on the Baseline Podcast. We bring you fun and facts. It I will tell you that is just weird in every sort of way, but that is our prediction for the Browns. We will go over the playoff picture next week as it will be finalized most likely depending on the Bengals Bills game. But they'll be finalized. But from there, we're going to briefly before we finish up the show, we're going to talk about the Cavaliers for 1 second because Josh, something was done that has never been done before, and that was in Cavs history. No one's ever scored 71 points, which was done. No one had scored 60 points in a Cavs jersey, not even LeBron James, but Donovan Mitchell scores 71 points, has 11 assists. Um, he he was worth all the first round picks they gave up. They gave up 3 first rounders for him. He was worth it because I think you added him to this core, and I think the Cavaliers are seriously someone to deal with. Truly, I've never watched this much Cavs basketball in probably about 5 years, and it's the most I've watched them because they're so entertaining. Man, he contributed to 99 points. There's only one person that's contributed more points in a ball game, and that was Wilt Chamberlain. Contributed 104 points. So Josh, what do you feel about Donovan Mitchell and this whole thing? Like, how do you feel about it? And what do you think about the Cavs? I mean, they're sitting in fourth place. They're 2 games back of first place. What do you think?
Well, I'm kind of with you, man. I initially thought that they gave up too much for Donovan Mitchell, who I thought was maybe more of like a Robin kind of player on a championship contender team. I thought that reasons that I guess they couldn't succeed in Utah were mostly not due to the fact that he one didn't really have a second scorer by his side, but I also didn't feel like he was capable of being like the leader of like a championship caliber team or even a contender. And I mean, since he's come to Cleveland, I think he's still averaging 29 points a
Yeah,
game. He's been absolutely hot leading this young team. And I mean, Garland and Mobley have been out the last couple games
yeah.
too. And I mean, he's still putting up the numbers and picking up the slack. So if you're a Cavs fan, I think you're really feeling good about this trade. And it's like even if we had those first round picks now are gonna be like in the 20s. So it's not like we're really missing out on anybody if you're a Cleveland fan. So yeah, this Mitchell trade ended up being a huge W, man. And I mean it's making the Cavs exciting to watch, which we didn't think would be the case.
The one thing they need to by the way, I don't know if you know this, Josh, they have the number one defense in the NBA right now. So they're not just scoring like they are. They have the number one defense in the
So
NBA.
since it's NBA defense, does that mean that they're allowing a league low 110 a game or something like that?
League low 104. So you're
Mm.
close. But
Remember back in the mid 2000s when the
oh
Boston
yeah.
Celtics held teams to 86 games with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen, and that was elite defense?
Yeah, and when the Pistons with Ben Wallace and all that. Yeah, I remember those days. They
Yeah,
they don't
allowing
exist
teams in the
anymore.
80s, man. Yeah,
But it's crazy because the Cavs last year were a good team. They just struggled with injuries last year. If you remember, Josh, they got riddled with
they
injuries at
were
the end of the
young. They
year.
didn't have a clear one,
Yeah,
and yeah, the injuries too, for
yeah.
sure,
But this
played a
year
role.
you have Allen,
This year,
you have
you got a clear
Mobley,
one. You got
a clear
I know I
two,
mentioned the injuries to Garland and Mobley, but relatively better health
healthy. Yeah, yeah.
from last year.
Did
And
you also
yeah,
see? Did you see the tweet that Robin Lopez tweeted out? He said, "Hey, Robin Lopez and Donovan Mitchell combined for 72 points and 11 assists tonight. What a duo they are."
that's like the Kobe Bryant, Kwame Brown meme from
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
decade ago, where they're like, like when on this day, Kobe and Kwame combined for 60 something points. Kobe had 64 of it, and Kwame had two or something.
It's just the way that rolls. But no, this Cavs
Yeah.
team is going to be very good. I think they're going to, my personal opinion, they'll at least get to the conference finals. That's my thought. I think they're good enough. They beat the Nets. They beat the Bucks. They beat the Celtics. They beat all these teams. Right now, they have the second best home record in the NBA. They struggle on the road, but they're the second best home record. So if they can get home court advantage, it's going to be a hard place
Yeah,
to
that's
beat.
gonna be the
A
key
team.
then, is getting one of those 1 or 2 seeds
Yeah,
so that
for
the
sure.
road games don't hurt you as much.
Yeah, for sure. But Josh, it's a new year. We have another great year of the Baseline Podcast coming to you this year. Josh and I are both excited. Excited to bring you new content, new guests, all that fun stuff. Josh, is there anything you would like to say to our listeners for the new year as we head into this brand new year of learning and growing?
Continue to watch the Baseline Podcast because it's probably going to be number 1 in 2023. That's about it.
You know, I couldn't have said it better myself. We do thank you so much for your support in 2022. As there was a transition at the the beginning of the year, Josh and I started doing it together, and it's just grown with guests. And we've had the most listens that we've ever had. We've had the most view that we've ever had. It's because of you guys. Because you guys listen, you guys share it. Continue to share it to your friends, your family. That we really appreciate it. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Where you can see all of our old episodes. Hopefully we'll have some interviews coming up. There's a lot of things that we want to do. Time permitting will happen. We'll see what happens with that. And if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you share it. Make sure you rate it. And again, remember, in the comments of either the YouTube or anywhere else, just tell who's better. Is it Ben or Josh? Who does this better? Who looks better? I don't care. It's always going to be Josh because he has the muscles. So that's the way it works around here. But no, we do appreciate you guys. We can't wait to talk to you next week. Remember, we'll have the NFL preview of the postseason next week and a lot of other things happening. So have a great weekend. And until next time, we'll see ya.